Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 13th episode of Brandon Robertson's Soul Hour. Yes, I am your host, Mr. Brandon Robertson. And today's guest, man, oh man, let me tell y'all something. I'm going to keep it brief because I need my brother to know. Yeah. I got my man Jose Valentino on the track. You already know that your boy's not whack. Mr. Brandon Robertson Soul Hour here. You already know this the time of the year. I got Dr. JV on the beatbox. You know we got the hip hop and we don't stop. We gonna keep rocking to the party all night. Yeah. Hey. Straight off the
baby.
dome.
What is top. Good?
Yes, so everybody, you have a multi Grammy nominee. You have a Emmy winning music per TV producer. You got records after records after records, awards after awards. He is the head of the music entrepreneurship program at the Prestige University of Florida, which is my rival, but we're not going to talk about that. Because,
we ain't going to talk about that.
Still my guy. We ain't going to talk about that. But I wanted to introduce everybody. Oh, yeah, you know, we're going to keep it civil. But I want to introduce my man, Mr. Dr. Jose Valentino.
Hey.
Everybody clap it off. Virtual clap off. Hey, Jose, man, how you doing today, man?
Dude, I'm doing great. Estoy demasiado brutal. Me siento. Oh, my bad. Yeah. Oh, we could do that? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I got my Spanish people watching. Go ahead.
Got you. Saludo a todo el mundo. De verdad que estoy demasiado feliz de estar aquí con mi pana, mi hermano de hermanos aquí, Brandon Robertson. I'm so glad to be here with my main man, Brandon Robertson. You know, mad respect, mad love. And it's 2020, but man, we've known each other since 2001 or 2, one of those.
Yeah. 2001? Yeah.
2001, baby.
Lord have mercy.
Oodala.
Yeah, shout out to my man Rob Griff, Mr. Griff, best band teacher in the world, man. Yo, so Jose, man, can you tell my audience here what is it that you do? A little bit background, and then we gonna get into some talk, man. We gotta talk the talk. Let them know.
All right. Yeah. Well, basically, there's 3 aspects to what I do. I'm a performer, I'm a producer, and I'm a professor. You like that alliteration, right? Triple P's. Yeah. But what I do essentially is I cultivate people's dreams because I latch on to people's ambitions because I'm just so fascinated with, you know, different dreams that people want to do, especially when it has a mission focus, a desire to want to help and impact people through the arts. And so I do that through different methods. You know, as a music producer, I help people achieve those dreams, not just from the quality of the music, but also making sure that the aim of the project is going to be fruitful for that particular artist once the project is completed. And I do that as well as a film composer. And I also do that through teaching, you know, and that's what my passion is. It's just cultivating the next generation of aspiring creative professionals who want to use their gifts to help make the world a better place. And that sounds kind of cliche, but it's the truth. And so I get to do that as a professor at the University of Florida. So
golly, man, you put me to shame, bro. I don't even sound as inspiring as you do.
Yeah, what are you talking about, man? You're the best in the South, bro.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. As a matter of fact, speaking of trying, everybody who's watching, see, here's the cool thing about the Brandon Soul Hour. You just never know what my guests might bring or feature or whatever. I don't know sometimes. So I was told that Dr. Valentino has a extensive, but yet you used the word fruitful. I like that. Fruitful collection, an eclectic collection of flutes. Now, for those that don't know, my man is heavy when it comes to flutes. He's heavy. He's the best in the game. I will, if I had to put my money up against anybody else and put it on Jose, oh yeah, you're gonna lose. I'm gonna get that guy. I'm gonna make that money. So
No, there's
I
a
asked,
lot of other people, man. There's a lot of other people,
yeah,
man.
man. So I asked Jose to come and introduce some of his toys. Can you show the audience some of your toys and your features, please?
Some of what I got in the arsenal. Yeah. So this flute is the Peruvian canna, and so I think one of the things that I find fascinating about flutes in general is that flutes and percussion in particular, like that relationship is like a beautiful marriage that has existed for millennia. Flutes and percussion can be found in every populated continent in the world and in different variations. But what I really find fascinating is the concept of how and perhaps why they were created. The first music that we listen to is in our mother's womb. And so with that in mind, we listen to her heartbeat and her breath. And so this is the breath right here.
After 25 weeks of conception, by the way. I
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's the canna.
That's the okay. Everybody, listen here, man. If you see me wiggling, that's because that sound.
That sound, boy.
That sound, yeah.
So,
Okay, so who we got next?
I just got this a couple days ago from this amazing flute artisan named Geraldo Hernandez from Puerto Rico, but he's a scholar of flute making. So this is the Indian Bansuri from India.
Indian flute.
Yeah. So if we were talking about that snake charming stuff right here. That's this right here. So I'm not an expert, by the way. I'm just learning it. So this is like probably the third time I attempt to play this. So. Ah, messed up. All right, hold on. But we need a drone, so hold on.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the Bansuri.
Wow, dude. And what part of? Do you know what part of India that's from? Maybe.
Man, I don't. I gotta do some research. I think if I do more research, I'll play it better. This is the Colombian gaita, so from Colombia. So
Colombia gaita.
yeah. So.
Bruh, why you had to do that?
It's getting better. It's getting better. Whoa! This is the bass flute right here.
The bass flute. Okay, the bass flute. All right.
Yeah.
Lord have everybody, everybody who just witnessed that, can y'all drop a comment in the comment section right now? Let Mr. Jose know how y'all feel, cause that was dope. I can't say I know too many flute players that can beatbox and play the flute at the exact same time. Y'all tripping.
And then of course this is the concert classical flute that I like to use in so many different contexts. So I don't know. What do we want to hear?
What we want to hear? bro. Okay, and you know what? You know what? Let me ask you something, Jose. You know,
Yeah.
since I consider you like you're the expert to me when it comes to flute, man. Like I have a lot of friends who have attempted. Yeah, I use the word attempt
Yeah.
because there's a because they can play all the right notes, they can play everything. But every time I've heard you play, even when we was in high school, man, like when I would hear you play saxophone, I'm just like, damn, this guy just got just a natural musicianship. Like he just has a natural talent. He's just, you know what I'm saying? It just comes
Hmm.
very natural for you. So when you play,
Appreciate
it feels very organic.
it. Yeah.
So how does one capture that kind of sound in the flute? Because the flute is it's a hard instrument to me to like in terms of the range, the mastering, the sound and the clarity, making
Yeah.
sure that intonationally, intonation wise, you're not pitchy all the time. So how do you work on that?
Yeah,
Like, how
yeah.
did you get to
Well, actually, I mean, when you think about it, like with the whole intonation and just the technique of it all, I mean, you're a bass player, upright bass player. So, in many ways, there's a lot of the same type of issues that we deal with this particular instrument. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I recommend anybody is to implement what I like to call multidimensional practicing. So, oftentimes, what we do is we just focus on the technical aspects of things. But that's good and all. I mean, it's foundational because when you work on technique, basically you're working on how to say what you want to say. But
Right.
the other aspect is what do you sound like when you're saying it and what is it that you want to say? What do you want to actually say? And
Right.
so, one suggestion that I provide for anybody is make sure that you're recording yourself when you're practicing so you can hear yourself from the audience's perspective. And
Mm.
then that's practicing sonically, not just technically. So practicing technically, practicing sonically, but also practicing visually. And within that, there's external visualization. So like, what do you look like when you're playing, right? Because that's another variable that oftentimes people neglect. And then, especially in the Florida State University, there's a lot of research that has been done in the past about perceived expressivity and how you look and what are you doing visually, how that influences people's perception of your expressivity. But I focus my dissertation on internal visualization. So,
Mm.
making sure that we can do what is called a cognitive translation process. That's a fancy word for basically saying what you are trying to convey, whether it's a story, a particular scene, something that is representative, like maybe a scenario, a time in your life, an
Mm-hmm.
episodic memory, or if it's resembling, right? So, am I trying to evoke the flute, or do I want you to hear a voice? Do I want you to hear
Mm.
the sound of lament? Even with one note.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh, oh.
Right, so and then you're adding the blues and things like that. So it's lament, it's the human voice, right? So
Right.
if I wanted to convey that feeling, I have to think, what is the tempo, what is how do I even talk when I'm feeling nostalgic? Do I cry?
Yeah.
What is the tempo of my cry? And translating that. And so making sure that you're recording it so that you can actually ask yourself, does that sound like to you? Like
Mm-hmm.
something that is outside of musical technique, because we have to practice technique, but we should also practice, sonically, visually, theoretically, and historically, also relationally. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that I do for years, that I've done for years, is I record my practices and then I give it to friends and mentors so that they can provide me feedback of their perceptions. You know what I mean? Because I
Mm.
feel like music is such a relational art. It's such a beautiful thing because it is so relational.
Right.
And that's such an essential part to really beginning to walk on a road where you're truly free to express who you are on an instrument.
And And you know what's cool about how you explained that the cognitive the perception of like how people view you and how you are being viewed. And I think that's another side of being a musician that we don't think about sometimes as performers,
Mm-hmm.
because we're so used to being the person providing the actual service that sometimes we haven't thought about, well, is the service that I'm providing good, or is it, how are people intaking that? Like
Yeah.
when you go and you're searching for like internet, for instance, right, and you call around different companies, internet companies, and you trying to see who got the fastest megabytes, who got, the fastest bandwidth that, can get me the instance, you know what I'm saying? But
Mm-hmm.
then you start looking at it from an outside perspective and saying, well, this company might have some latency, but when you look at it from a more, like a bigger view, worldly view, it doesn't seem that way, but on a smaller scale, it does. So I was interested that I'm sitting there thinking about that. And I'm like, man, that's an interesting perspective. So how do you use that when you're like performing and because you travel a lot, man? You do a lot of
Yeah.
lectures. For those that don't know, Jose kind of created this model, this music or yeah, music entrepreneurship model that he and I we had several discussions about, and it's really neat because you've kind of modernized it, and it's funny, your model actually fits with the craziness that we're dealing with right now, like with COVID, like how
Yeah.
we've had to all teachers have had to switch. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like, just let people know, like, how can you use entrepreneurship to really advance past what we're dealing with now, especially for musicians who are like us, professional musicians who are kind of like stuck at home and not working, like.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, um, you know, and by the way, I mean, I just want everybody to know just how much I admire you, Brandon, for everything that you do, and I think you are such a prime example and a role model of somebody who is doing it and doing it successfully, whether it's your musical passion or being a father, being a husband, you know what I mean, and you're a leader within your community, which I commend you for.
No, man,
One of
thank
the
you.
things one of the things that I can touch on is first, yes, you mentioned about I do this during performance. And absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that I do is I make sure that I prepare enough so that when I'm on stage, I feel so comfortable that the repertoire that I'm playing is almost second nature. And one of the things that I enjoy most is actually looking and communicating with the audience, whether it's before or after the tune, or even during the tune while the music is happening, or if I'm actually trying to communicate even through my instrument and seeing how they actually react. That's always a joy. And then there's also moments where I'm actually drawing inspiration from what the audience is giving me. I mean, even from their attire of what they're wearing, or the mood that they're in, and I'll translate that into my music. You know what I mean? And so there's subconscious levels of awareness that exists between the artist and the audience, like a beautiful connection. And so
How do you do that? I don't mean to cut you off real quick. How do you do that though? Like, how are you looking at somebody in the audience and they're like wearing, like, let's say if they're wearing, I don't know, a Ed Hardy shirt. I went throwback on you right quick. They
yeah,
wearing an
yeah.
Ed Hardy shirt, and you see that while you're playing. Like, you're saying that you can somehow play a musical notation for that
Yeah.
person to
Well, I mean, one of the things that I do all the time, and this is something I recommend for everybody, is, make sure that you do your sound check early enough so that when people are coming in that hour before for the show, that you're just spending time getting to know the audience. You know what I mean? And so I'm actually relating with them because I know their stories, because they know my stories.
Right.
And that is just I think, a meaningful way to um, provide insurability for your audience. And I'm not talking about insure like with en. I'm talking about
Yeah.
insure like
Insure.
insurance.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know.
You
I
know what I
followed
mean?
you. I got you.
And so it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter like how the show unfolds, because there's always going to be some level of spontaneity with any show, regardless of the genre, and especially if you're doing it in contexts that are more creative, improvisational, music based.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of improvisation, but they'll be much more receptive, much more forgiving. They're going to be much more down to earth. You know what I mean? Because you have a lot of people, especially if they don't know you for the first time, they're going to be spectating. But once they realize that you're just a regular cat, you know what I mean? And that at the end of the day, the accolades and the awards, the Grammys, the Emmys, the downbeats, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. It matters what you do for that particular moment in time. And
Right.
making sure with that in mind, coupling this notion that it doesn't matter what you've done before or even what you have in line for the next, because as we know, especially as jazz musicians, our favorite gig is the next gig.
This
You
the
know what I
next
mean?
year. Yep.
Is the next gig. But also just keeping in mind, I mean, one of the things that I tell everybody, and it's the truth, is this is the greatest moment of my career right now, playing for you, you know? And I will tell you this, Brandon, this right here is the most dopest moment, most killing moment right now in my career. You know what I mean? And so that's how we got to treat it, being grateful, having great gratitude and forgiveness and everything that we do. Speaking very philosophically, but I feel like these are the pillars to how we can change our mindset and begin on a fruitful journey as a creative entrepreneur amidst a global pandemic. So you asked me this. That was the answer to the first question.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So the second one is, suggestions for, the musicians in this new model that we're in. Just to put it very clearly, I would say suggestion number one: do less. People who get things done aren't superhuman achievers who do a million things a day, but rather they're really good at focusing on tasks that will produce results. You know what I mean? So for me, like at this particular time, I'm not performing as much, right? I mean, I'm doing virtual concerts here and there, but what I am doing is everything. I can couple it down to one task, which is music production. I teach music production. I use music to help grow my business. I do music production for networking and things like that. Second suggestion is be productive, not busy. There's a difference.
Oh, say
Yeah,
that again. I like that one.
yeah. Be productive, not busy.
Not busy.
Yeah, and so Brandon, like this whole concept is it's important for us to be able to maximize our time and to be able to compartmentalize what we consider important tasks, urgent tasks, and unimportant tasks. You know what I mean? So that's another one that I love is, I just spend a lot of time on what is called pre-grind clarity. Pre-grind clarity. He's like, hey, what?
PGC, all
My
these
boy got all the
acronyms.
words,
Yeah, all
boy.
these acronyms, man. I'm trying to keep up, y'all.
No, but pre-grind clarity is basically is a must do because look, there's no strategic advantage to doing the grind. You know what I mean? We all need to stop doing and start thinking, right? I mean, all of us at some point must have gone through some type of like internal turmoil where we were questioning like, wait, what do we do now, especially amidst the pandemic? But I mean, when you think about Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, I mean, these are just a couple of the geniuses, and they lived through different experiences. One of them a pandemic, and another one another type of unfortunate humanitarian pandemic. But they couldn't be professors. They couldn't do their gig. They had to take a break.
Right.
And because they did that break, they had a lot of time to really start thinking about how they can maximize their time to create a product and a service that is going to meet people's needs with love. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, and what's cool is like I always whenever I do shows, the very first thing I do, I open up my shows with I'll have everybody in the audience just clap.
Yeah.
And I say, all right, everybody clap. And everybody's clapping. And I say, okay, what I'm gonna do right now is we're gonna make up a blues right here on the spot based off of the beat that y'all create for us.
That's
So right
right.
there, I got the audience already locked in, right?
Yeah.
And I love the fact that's why I wanted to ask you about the whole when you said you see somebody's clothes and you can kind of play off of that because I always pay attention. You play bass too, so but me being a acoustic bass player behind the band, I can pan the room a lot easier because you also being a horn player as well, you have to kind of be stationary to some degree, not depending on your
Yeah.
setting, but if you're like the leader of the group, you're kind of stationary in one spot when you're playing.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, I can kind of turn and look at everything. And I'm always looking to the people in the back. I play for the people in the back of the room because they have I have less interaction with them. So those are the people who I want to cater to first, and then let's let it move
Oh,
forward.
that's amazing.
You know, but
Yeah.
I like that you have actually put some thought into it, and that's why I asked about the whole entrepreneurship because I think it's like, for instance, me and you was talking about this earlier about the premise of this show, and you had asked me like, why did you start this show? And I kept it real with you, man. I was
Yeah.
just like me, and I'm looking at our comment section. I see a bunch of musicians who are watching this. We were all locked down for 4 months,
Yeah.
still to kind of still now, but not as strongly and as restricted as it was back in March, from March to like the end of June. We was like
Yeah.
locked, and I started this show based off of what you described as this is a moment in time where we are challenged as musicians. Like, are we gonna let Corona like literally dismiss our entire career over
Yeah.
something that was out of our control, or do, like you said, I love it, man. Be productive, not
Busy.
well, I got it.
Absolutely, man. And
That's
all of
heavy.
us went through that, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's this also goes, by the way, this goes hand in hand. I'm going to do a perfect segue of another suggestion because I mentioned 3 out of 10 suggestions that I have for people. So another one would be choose the red pill, not the blue pill. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Matrix. Absolutely. You've seen the Matrix.
Why am
When
I
you
not the
take the
blue pill?
what happens when you take the red pill and then you're woke, and then you realize that the machine is the one controlling you. So that's kind of talking about like this whole concept of artificial intelligence, AI technology. And so why am I even talking about that is because even before COVID, there's a lot of great technology out there to help us and help us do our job better. But even in music now, there's a lot of technology that if you don't stay up to date and know how to always have an edge, a competitive edge over the technology, then the technology will do the gig, will get the gig, and you won't get the gig. You see what I'm
Man.
saying? And so that's one of the things that I really I took to heart a long time ago, which is why, like, even amidst the global pandemic, I can be working on the next film where I'm, film composing or, producing 7 different albums this summer for different clients, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the key suggestions that I would suggest to anybody is when talking about making sure that we stay ahead of the technology and how do we sustain our business and keep it growing is here. Ready? Overtly express the humanity of the products and the services that you provide people and do it with sincerity and compassion. Now, I don't say these words just to throw them out. I'll say it again. Overtly express the humanity of your products and services, right? To your
Right.
clientele, your partners, your employers, to your audience. Whatever you do it with sincerity and with compassion.
That's
You
right.
know what I mean? And compassion, by the way, if you break down the word, the etymology, right? Passion means sacrifice. Come means together. So it's the idea
Uh,
where you are going to take somebody's dream, even if it's an event planner who's hiring you for a jazz quartet gig.
mhm.
That's why I asked them, what is your dream? What is the outcome? What are your aims? What do you really want to happen with this event? That's why I ask you, why'd you do this? You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah,
Because
that
I
makes
don't want
sense.
to talk about myself. I want to make sure that whatever people listen to, that they can turn off their screens a little bit more inspired. And technology has always and will always advance. But what remains the same is the longing for human connection, such as love,
Yeah.
communication, understanding. And so thriving entrepreneurs and businesses understand this notion very well. And so it's important for us to meet people where they are. Relationships are the currency of the kingdom. And I think that would be another suggestion is, you know, always stay ahead of the technology.
hmm and I like the fact that you touched on the human connection within music
Yeah.
versus the technical connection from musicians to the audience.
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of like, I have a love hate relationship with technology. Like, I really can give you know, about like me having to like get up all the time and stay on top of social media posts and stuff, having to always, do this and that. And then, you got to stay encouraged because you want people to engage, and you want people to get it involved with your music and who you are as a person. But it's nothing live connection. Like I've been more successful at live concerts than I have doing stuff like this. Not to saying that this stuff isn't working, but
Yeah,
people who know me, like know me as a person, they know Brandon as like the extrovert. So I
yeah.
feel very introverted. Like even like this, like me and you, if we was able to do this live, it would be a whole different dynamic.
Oh, dude, different
You know what I'm
dynamic
saying?
completely. Absolutely, man. And I mean, I love teaching music production, music technology, and I really do. Um, with that in mind, notice I didn't say but.
Yeah.
I said, with that in mind, I make sure that when I teach it, I tell the students, make sure that when you're doing this, don't succumb to the technology to where it becomes the clutch, becomes the handicap. You know what I mean? Use it so that you can truly express the full potential of your story. You know what I mean? Because I feel like as artists, we're storytellers. And so we are gifted with that opportunity, but it's also a responsibility to make sure that we are telling stories that are meaningful, that are sincere, that are
Mm-hmm.
filled with compassion, that is of quality and quantity, plus authenticity.
Authenticity and originality.
Yep.
We need,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so let me ask you this: since we're talking about storytelling, I would like for you to take. I want to take the show into to. I want to segue into the next part of the show where we get into the records that you selected. So for those who are watching, I invite my guest on the show, and they have to pick 3 songs, soulful songs that have a soulful meaning to them, and they have to attach those 3 songs to one of my 3 keywords for the show, which is life, perseverance, and freedom. Now, Jose has been touching on all 3 of those throughout this whole interview, which is great. But I'd like for you to share with the audience some of these selections that you chose and kind of expand upon that. So the first one for life, you chose Yin and Yangin by Victor Wooten. So
Oh
what
yeah.
was so give us the backstory on that. Why would you select this particular record for life, and how does this song have a
Man,
life
well,
meaning to you?
now we're getting to that segment where it's a lot more personal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, I can only give you a testimony based on my anecdotal experience.
Okay.
And one of the things that, well, here are just so many aspects about that particular song and who that artist is. You know, Victor Wooten is a life giver and or I should say a life reinforcer, because
Yeah.
when you hear his workshops, he really puts you in a position to where you have to reflect on your life and ask yourself why. Why are you doing what you are doing? Why are you going to practice? Why are you going to perform? Why are you going to pursue this particular career? I remember he said to an audience that I was in, that I think his mom said, "Why does the world need another bass player? You know what I mean? Or another great musician?
Mm,
The world needs great people, good people." You know what I mean? And so
mm,
that really resonated with me. And then also from just his musicianship, I think a lot of people accolade him for the fireworks and the fly he does. But I mean, this guy's just so deep from a musical perspective. Chronologically, he's got so much foundation, and also, I would say spatially. I mean, the guy has so many influences from different regions of the world in his playing, which informs his vocabulary as well, especially since it's not just R&B or funk or even Western European genres, but I mean the guy just studies even Indian tabla rhythms and West African rhythms and incorporates that all into his playing. And
mm,
so for a person to do that, and when I listen to his playing, you know, that ability to be able to do that in a way that has balance, you know what I mean? Because all of
yeah.
it is packaged based on the audience that he's playing for at any given moment. So it's
Mm,
still a level of adaptability. I
right.
just find that so fascinating. and life-giving. You know what I mean? And one of the things that I think we all need to do, and it's just a lesson that I've learned from Victor, is we need to be tools of of you know of life-giving music that really makes us wake up and just reflect on our lives, you know, whether it's
Right.
a episodic memory, but also look forward to the better days, even if it doesn't come across that way in the present
Mm.
moment. And so I chose this not because like it makes me party and go crazy or anything like that. I chose yin and yang, and because also that that stems from the concept of yin and yang,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is in life. You have it's like opposites, but how they balance each other. And there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different kinds of things like that that we can say how they're opposites but balance each other. My relationship with my beloved wife, we're opposite in so many ways, but we balance each other out. And I think that concept of balance, the concept of, humbling ourselves so that we can learn more about another person and be able to relate to another person. These are the life lessons. So I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of why I chose this particular song by Victor Wooten, but I think I covered it. So
Yeah, nah, that's a beautiful explanation, man. Because it's you're right. Life, us having those lifelong relationships, those standing relationships, those connections that interplay between you and someone else who's the total opposite of you.
mhm.
Like I love the yin and the yang analogy because that is so true. It represents kind of the balance. It does. It represents a balance of life. Like
Mhm.
imagine if you had a whole life full of Jose's. No offense, I'm not saying it like that, but you know what I mean. Like, or a life all of just
I couldn't
Brandons.
handle it.
I couldn't handle it. I don't think no one in the world could handle a whole bunch of themselves, especially if you're someone who dwells on if you had problems dwelling on insecurities or your flaws, can you imagine seeing yourself every single day of a bunch of views with that same connotation?
Yeah.
So you're right. So that's a real cool perspective. So the next one you chose for freedom. My next word is freedom, everybody, and you chose a Michael Brecker tune, which was kind of hip because nobody has mentioned Michael Brecker yet. And you chose the song "Angle of Repost." Did I say that right? Is that
Oh yeah.
okay?
Angle of repose.
Repose, angle of repose. Okay, and what? I've never heard this tune before. So what? Give us
Yeah.
a backstory on that. Why did you choose this for freedom?
Man, well, I mean, first of all, it was very tough. I mean, when you said Soul Records at first, I thought of a lot of different artists, and I was pretty much going to go on a different direction. But once I realized how you operationalize the definition of soul in the survey that you gave me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and how these are actually three different elements. We're discussing the second one, freedom. You know, uh, I realized I said, wait a minute, I'm about to choose three songs that don't even fall within the labeled genre of meta genre of soul music. But
Mm-hmm.
as we know, soul is much bigger, and especially with the diaspora of different musical elements infiltrating all music around the world.
Exactly.
Even the genre of soul is stylistically embedded. I mean, even in the music where most people wouldn't even think it would be embedded in. But Michael Brecker, I mean, let me just say first and foremost, go back to the bass with Victor Wooten. My dad is a bass player. He's a nurse by day, but he's a fantastic bass player, um, and so with that in mind, I grew up listening to bass players even before I played the flute, which was my first instrument. But my dad was the bass player in Tampa, and he had a lot for a band that he called Soul Rhythms, and Eric Darius came out of that band.
Mm-hmm.
He played in that band for a number of years. Dave Stewart as well.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of different people. But with Dave Stewart there in that band, we related a lot. You know what I mean? He would come, I mean, we would do rehearsals in the garage, with everybody. And at that time, I still didn't know how to play. So there's a connection with all of this because I used to listen to my dad playing the bass all the time in the rehearsals and in the gigs and begging to play with him. in the gig. But so once I got to that place where I started being able to improvise, especially in the ninth grade when I met another buddy of mine, really talented, named Brandon Robertson, everybody.
Oh, I don't know who that is.
uh, you know, uh, I started, I called up my friend, Dave Stewart, and Dave would come over to my house, even when I was in high school, bro. And he would come to my house and he would teach me. And one of the people that, and so I was really into Victor Wooten for a long time, not because of just the tapping and all that stuff. No, but like actually for his compositions and his production. But then he opened my ears to a new sound of expressivity, a new depth, not another level of depth, just a different depth. And so it was Dave Stewart who introduced me to Michael Brecker. And at first it was one of those things where I felt so much emotion in his playing, but I couldn't process it. Have you ever like tried a particular food or a drink and you're like, oh God, this is so strong? Well,
Right.
I'm sure that we ain't gonna talk about that. But then it's like, well, the more you do, the more you have it, it's like, wait a minute, I get it now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, so that's what Michael Brecker was for me. And I think part of the beauty about it is that like I also felt the same way with John Coltrane for the longest time, but I listened to them. I listened to them religiously because I just like I knew they were saying stuff. Basically, what it was such a beautiful language. I just didn't understand it, and I wanted to understand what that language was. What was it that they're trying to communicate? So as I dug deep into not just the people that they listen to musically, but what is their life story, right? And why do they make these musical choices and artistic choices? I mean, just talking about Michael Brecker, I just felt like, wow, here's another guy who is just, he was so free. And it's not freedom in being able to play anything he wanted, okay? Because, I mean, I think he could, and everybody thought he could, but whenever you hear him, he was just talking about how he would just practice all the time. But I think there's a sense of freedom that happens when you can own up to the fact that you do have limitations. And he always owned up in every interview about his limitations. And I just think that level of humility, and that's one of the things that I always hear, like whenever I talk to my friends, one time I was chatting with John Petitucci, and who was one of his closest friends. And he was just saying like, man, Mike was just so humble. Like he just was never satisfied. And I think that yearning, that hunger to try to be better, that's what gives you that freedom, an open door to possibilities and creativity. Because the moment that you let pride overtake you, you're not free anymore. You're bondage to that pride. And then you're limited. You're in bondage to your potential. And so that's why I chose Michael Brecker. And a lot of times people hear him for his prowess and dexterity, but I chose Angle of Repose because I just think there was such a freedom and honesty, not just in his ability to play, but also the compositions that the compositional arrangement of a 15-piece ensemble, a quindectet. You know what I mean? And the way he's playing, just it literally sounds like he's an angle of repose, which means like this, chilling. So we all strive for those moments where we could just chill and we feel our most free sometimes in those instances. And so that's another reason why I chose this particular song.
You said something, man, that really struck with me just now, and you used how Michael Brecker has freedom in his sound, which inspired you, and it's really interesting to know that you heard that when you were in high school and you couldn't figure it out, but you knew that he was saying something. And that right there is something that you and I have been, we've worked on for years as individuals, as men, just in our personal life, just years, just figuring that out. And he, like right now, I've gotten to a point where I seen my wife just chimed in. Shout out to my beautiful wife, Angelica. I love you. So I know one time I remember breaking down to my wife, like, man, like this is like, I'm so frustrated because I feel pigeonholed. Like people only classify me as a jazz bassist, though that's my specialty. I play other stuff. And it wasn't until I decided to at the time I was, I was in a group, and it wasn't until I had to part ways from that group. And me,
Mhm.
and you know the gentleman who was out part of that group, Dr. Bartholomew, Zach Bartholomew.
Yeah.
And when I parted ways from that group, I then at that moment felt the freedom of, oh man, I can finally become the person I want. And it wasn't that Zach or that group was holding me back from that. Actually, Zach helped push me into that role. It's just that you get to a level of, man, you want to feel like you're not, like I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel like I was reaching my true potential, and I just was
Yeah.
feeling like I'm not satisfied with what's happening musically right now. So
Yeah.
now I've gotten to a place where, man, I can make the music I want to make, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that you kind of use that example. That's a really great example.
Man, what you're talking about right here is really a one stage of the creative process. And I like to think that there are four stages to the creative process. And what you're talking about is the dilemma that people experience in the stage of delivery. And what I mean by that is there's an amazing music ed scholar named John Cradis. I know him personally, and he proposes this idea that the four levels of the creative process is exploration, then improvisation, then composition, and then creative performance. I like to call it delivery. And so, what you needed, what you were yearning for, was the opportunity to explore. Because even in jazz, even in improvisational music, that's another level, that's another stage of the creative process, which is improvisation, right? But
Mhm.
even improvisation is a spectrum. You know what I mean? Because you can get like as far as Ornette Coleman and Wayne Shorter, and you can get as like very programmatic, type of improvisation, like some other cats. And
Mhm.
so I think, your ability like once you were released from that ensemble, it basically you had to explore. You were given a compass, but you needed to know where you wanted to go.
Right.
And I think the exploration process is something that we all actually go through. Believe it or not, oftentimes it happens, like especially those who do academic studies within, let's say, within jazz or this type of music. The
Mhm.
creative process happens once we graduate. like once we or at least we start exploring. That's what I mean.
Mhm.
And so what I try to do, especially as a professor, is like give them the opportunities to explore and improvise, and then document their ideas, in the formal compositions, and how they perform it and deliver and stuff like that. But I guess what I'm saying is that I went through that as well, because there was a time where I was playing in other people's bands, you know what I mean? And I had a lot of room, but now I play in other people's bands better because I'm secure in my voice and who I am.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
I've traveled, and I'm not talking about traveling the world. I'm saying I have traveled through different musical realms. I have been able to test things, discover what I don't like, what works for me. You know what I mean? Because especially once you employ another level of creative process, which is composition. Once you start writing your own music, you know what I mean, and then playing it in front of people, that will inform you more about who you are and how comfortable you feel in your own skin.
Mhm.
Then you can play in other people's bands. I bet you play now in Zach's band better than what you did 3 years ago. And I'm not
Oh
talking about
man.
just because of technical facility that you got better, but it's
Right.
this level of assurance that you have that just changes the game. And I remember a few years back when I saw you after not seeing you for a number of years, man. I saw you at that club, that jazz club, where
Yeah.
having that brunch, man, and just I felt like I finally got to hear, Brandon, like the lion, you know what I mean? Or the one who was, or a hungry hyena just chasing
Yeah.
chasing the meat, bro. You know what I mean? And but believe it or not, I feel like when you were going live on Facebook playing, there was a time where you were just going live all the time, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And there was just like you started really feeling comfortable and just developing a new voice, bro, a new voice of authority. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's not just on the instrument, but it's like in the field, you know?
Yeah, man. You know what's crazy though? Like so many people have asked me about like, oh, you don't go live anymore. You don't go live no more. If for a while I thought it was getting monotonous. Like, okay, I'm giving out too much. Like, and then I rebutted myself and said, well, you can never give too much because if you giving little, then you're kind of being selfish. Because as musicians, we have to be selfless, you know. And so, which segued me, which actually segued me into the last recording you picked because it is talk about perseverance, and that's exactly what you just described. You saw me I mean, Jose, you remember me in jazz band in high school, and then you got to see me at first time actually when I came back to Blake, when I came with Zach in
Yeah,
2009, and you came and
yeah,
saw me, and I remember your reaction because you came and we played in the lobby with your saxophone.
yeah. I remember
And
that, bro.
it was funny,
I'm
everybody.
glad that
I'm
wasn't
telling this story
recorded because
because
I don't want people
Jose
knowing that I
had the
improvised.
same exact excitement in his face as he did when we was in school, and then as I saw him later, it was like the same. Nothing had changed. I was like, bro, are you this happy
Yeah,
all the time? Like you're like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean because like I think that's a personality attribute that makes me fitting for the position that I'm in right now. You know what I mean? Because like, I think, and you are in, by the way. We're professors. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's shocking.
Dude, at ninth and 10th grade, because I was in ninth, you were in 10th grade. No, I mean, who would have thought if somebody would have tell us that we would end up being professors, man? You know what I mean? What? But it's because we're not just like into what we're into, but we get excited about other people's dreams and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I think what as the beauty about being a professor, and I'm tying this to perseverance, is because I think perseverance is associated um, with the process.
Hmm.
Right? We love seeing the process unfold of an individual, and you can't be more transparent than going live. You know what I mean? And letting people know what you are doing, what are you thinking, letting them know that, hey, you just messed up or you're not comfortable with this idea. Oh, but this was an awesome idea, right? See
Right,
you next time. And that's what we do as professors. And being able to document that process, right? That's composition.
right.
Because see, composition is not just what you make like a song. No, composition is just documentation. You know what I mean? And when we can go back to that documentation and have an opportunity, we talk about, especially as musicians, our favorite gig is the next gig, right?
Hmm.
That's hope. And that's the other aspect of what we love. You know what I mean? So the other word connected to perseverance, or an attribute of what helps us persevere, is if there is hope.
Yeah. And you chose Bruno Miranda. Isn't he? He's a gospel singer, isn't he?
No, no, he's a gospel pianist.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, his
Yeah.
name sounded so familiar, and I was like, where have I heard this guy's name before?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, he's a gospel pianist and fantastic audio engineer, and he toured with Ron Canoli and
Ooh.
William McDowell and a lot of different people. And
Ooh,
so,
William
this is
that's a bad singer
yeah,
right
yeah. So
there.
he and I
Yeah.
we made an album recently, and this is one of the songs called "Song of Hope." So I
What?
decided that that's the song that I selected. So Bruno is on piano, and then if you were to hear that song, you would hear me on flute playing, and that's an original composition by the both of us. When we went to Brazil, we did a spontaneous um, improvised composition in the spot at a particular church. Um,
Wow.
so
That's dope, man. That's actually pretty dope. Like
yeah,
you moments like that are beautiful as with musicians. That those are moments that we can't forget.
yeah,
I actually, what my favorite moment I had with you, because me and you've had some good moments with each other musically, and
yeah,
it's
yeah. But
just
we ain't gonna talk about that.
we ain't gonna talk about the others. but but one cool musical moment I remember. Jose popped up on me randomly at my gig, at my brunch gig.
Yeah,
And the piano player, shout out to my man Joe. Oh man, oh my god, I can't believe I'm going blank on his on
dang.
his
And he's watching. Now he's like,
Nah, I know. I'm going. I'm sorry, I can't say it because I just went completely blank right now. But anyways, I just remember him leaning over to me and he had whispered to me, he's like, this guy is really ridiculous on the flute. And I said, nah, man, he holding back actually. He's not really getting in right now. And then I said, Jose, you ain't getting in, and you're like, oh, you want me to get down? And then this man proceeded to start beatboxing and playing the flute. I'm like, yo, what? Where is? And that right there was a beautiful moment because I just remember all the times how I would just sit there in jazz band and Jose and we'll be listening to our teacher, Mr. Griffin, like just go through all these simple, the oodalahs and that.
Utilize, baby.
And he always had that thing with his shoulder when he, I don't know why he would do that, but it would always swing, even when he wasn't trying to. He would swing.
Yeah.
It just was cool, man, to see our
Yeah.
journey come from where we first started. And you talk about the documentation of compositions. Both of us now have musical documentations that's all around the world now that people are able to enjoy. So
Absolutely.
I actually want to end the show on this note because we got a bunch of questions that came in, which is great. I think you really shocked people with the flutes. I don't think they were ready for that. They were not
Oh.
ready. So we got a question.
Yeah.
Danny Esposito.
Yeah.
He asks Dr. Valentino, what's your main inspiration? What are you inspired by? What inspires you? What gets you going in the morning?
Man, what gets me morning in the morning is a nice cup of coffee, Danny. No, man. I'm inspired just by the blessings of God that He's just bestowed upon my life, man. Just straight up. I mean, uh, just I count my blessings each and every single day, and so um, I'm inspired by my wife. I'm inspired by my son. I'm inspired for the very fact that I get to be a dad. You know what I mean? That I
Mm-hmm.
get a new day of opportunity to be able to learn and discover. You know what I mean? And experience wonder. I think that's something that oftentimes we don't realize just how much wonder exists in our
Mm-hmm.
daily lives. And so what inspires me is the wonder that God has just bestowed not just upon me but upon so many people's lives, and in the opportunity to fellowship with other people and communicate with them. I start experiencing just even more of that hint of wonder that God has put in everybody's lives.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. That's what's up. That's what's up. And we got our last question here. Actually, I know this gentleman very well. He is a prominent, prominent trombonist. Plays with the legendary New Orleans Jazz Orchestra. He also mixed my album as well.
Mm.
It's my man, Mr. Chris Butcher. Shout out to my man, Chris Butcher. I seen he chimed in. Love that guy. Chris asked. He asked a really good question. He says, have you ever produced for an artist that micromanages every fine detail? How do you deal with it and get them to move forward?
He just asked the music business question.
He did
He
because
just
he's in
went
the
straight. He
music.
said, "Okay, look, let's cut all the philosophical, spiel that's going on. Like, this is my moment. Okay, ask the professor of music business this particular question, and my answer is absolutely yes." Yes, and I have fallen victim not once, not twice, but I'd say, at least 5 times, but I personally don't want to go beyond that fifth time. And so, I mean, just from a very, you know, practical, but, and I mean this, what I'm about to tell you is so true, okay, to your man, Butch,
Chris.
Chris,
Yeah.
Chris, like to Chris, but also Brandon, and just to especially, it doesn't matter. Actually, now it doesn't even matter based on like not even on the genre that you, or the genres that you do. It's like, it's just in general. Too many independent artists don't do this. Write a contract. Yeah.
Mm.
And express the exact details of how you want that process to be, whether you're going to be a producer or you're going to be the artist or the engineer, et cetera, et cetera. Everything you do it with the contract. I don't care if you're my aunt. I don't care if you're, my sister, if you are my best friend or whatever. Like, if we're going to work on a production, we're going to have to do a contract, because all it is, it's not, there's no offense taken. It's important. I think it's beautiful to
Oh, uh-oh. Oh, there he goes. Did we lose you?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good, good. Finish.
Yeah.
Wait, you had froze for like a quick second. That's all I
Oh, my
wanted
bad,
to.
my bad, my bad. Yeah, yeah. So I would say, make sure that you put in very detail, like everything that you need to make happen in that contract, and discuss it with the client. Because if they breach that contract, then you know what you need to do next, whether it's to, bounce, you know what I mean, and remove yourself. But if you do, then you're gonna have an indemnification clause, meaning that you're gonna get compensated if something goes down south or sour. You know what I mean? So that would be my suggestion: is making sure that any type of like music business that you're dealing with, do it with a contract.
And then when you and maybe to add on to what Chris had asked, and because I see that he's still watching, so maybe if you can add this on to your other, add this on to your answer, um, with that contract, do you have to have you had to do that with musicians that you know personally, like your friends or people,
Yeah,
because there's two types of contractual situation
agreements.
agreements. You have your written and you have your verbal. If
Yeah,
that's the homie, your verbal is your word because you know this person.
yeah.
But when you have the written one, you're dealing with an entity that is not transpired to your realm of what you do or how you
No,
conduct
no,
business.
I
So
get
that's
it.
on the how do you differentiate that? So there's no
Absolutely. And I think that that there are things that we do as artists that are practices, good practices,
mm-hmm,
and malpractices.
mm-hmm,
It's a reason why certain types of musicians never flourish. And it may not even be because they could be the most talented, they could be the most relational, they could have everything necessary, but if they don't handle business in a way that communicates intentions
mm,
effectively, they won't reap the fruits of their labor. And so even if we're homies, like, right now, live on Facebook, I'll tell you, Brandon, I love you. But if you want me to make an album for you, I need you to tell me what's going to be best suitable in terms of the process that we go. And I need to tell you as well, because there's another level of life investment that we would do for each other. And ultimately we have the same outcome. I want you to be most successful out of this project. You want me to produce the best quality. And so a contract in this particular context, right? So like, you know, in the context of music business or just business in general, I
mm-hmm.
don't perceive this to be a negative thing. I think of this as an actual positive thing that oftentimes is neglected and but so needed, essential, because it's a way to write down our thoughts. I'll never forget my PhD professor, um, Dr. Victor Fung. He told me, he said, writing is thinking. And so, you really have to think about, how do you want this process to be?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and then can you communicate it in the form of writing? Because like one thing is I could be like, hey, okay, cool, cool. Yeah, I'll produce your whole album. And then next thing you know, I'm done with the sixth song. And you're like, well, hold on, you said a whole album. And then I said, oh, yeah, yeah, a whole album, but that's six songs. You're like, no, no, but I expected 10. Where was it written? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it's
Yeah.
important for us to actually just, delineate all those details.
Yeah.
And in
That's
doing so, we'll save a lot of drama. So
right.
I didn't say that answer as a way to be like, if they do you wrong, get your money. You got it
Mm-hmm.
written. No, 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 and bounce. No, no, I'm not talking about
Right.
that. It's just doing things in a way that is actually going to be beneficial for everybody, because we got to start seeing people like valuing them for the service that they bring to the table. You know what I mean? Because you have a business, you are a sole proprietor,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a business as well. And so, how do you do business with friends? Make sure that business is business and friends is friends. You know what I
Right.
mean? But I
Right.
know within certain communities, especially in the jazz community, it's like, well, yo, I got this gig. Can you make it this day or whatever? But I mean, especially moving on forward, one suggestion I give to any musician is, if you do contract with any gig, also include an indemnification clause, because then, like, if it has to shut down, the gig has to shut down because of a pandemic, you still get paid. You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So
Right.
it's stuff like that.
Cool. Hey, Jose, man. Thank you so much, man, for answering those questions. And man, it's been a wonderful conversation with you, brother. I
Hey,
enjoyed
thanks,
this,
man.
man. I really did enjoy this. You dropped some jewels on me that I hadn't never thought of. And the difference between yourself and myself, between the masters and that PhD, is the logistical side of things, of how you communicate and convey these things. See, I'm still West Tampa Blake. My so the way I come at people and talk to people is like, yo, yo, you need to straighten up. Like you should hear how I probably talk to some of my students, and they're just like,
Hey,
Professor, we relate to you a whole lot. And I'm like, listen, I don't talk, I'm not trying to
hey,
talk
hey,
all,
Brandon,
you know.
Brandon, listen, man. You listen, man. Uh, how do I say this? You and I were cut from the same cloth, buddy.
Oh, I know.
I just know who. I know that I'm not even looking on Facebook who's watching, but I know that there's certain types of people watching, and I got
Right.
to make sure I keep it cool, keep it 100. You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean?
Oh, I
It's
know. Trust
like,
me. I know.
hello, hello.
Yeah. No, I know. But see, here go the thing too, though.
Yeah.
Here go the thing too, and this is why, like, not the. I mean, we're gonna end it right here, but like, at least at my school, one thing I teach my students is, why people here at this school, they like being around me, and they like what I do, is because I have grown into my authentic self. I know
Yep.
who I am I know I'm branded. I'm animated. I'm loud. I like to talk. I like to meet people. So when people are around me and they're like, "Dang, is he really like this?" Yeah. And
Yeah.
now, I mean, my coworkers know it. My boss know it. My students know. Like, they all know
Yeah. Accept
that's
you for who you
branded.
are.
That's branded.
And
You're not. It's,
the other beautiful thing is it's not just the authenticity. Something else that is so important is consistency. Are you
mm-hmm.
consistent with who you are projecting yourself to be? You know what I mean? Because when you're
Yeah.
not consistent, you're phony.
You're
That's it.
phony. And we gonna end it just like that. Hey, can we end the show with another B-box? Can I do a little freestyle? Can we no
I'll do a little beatbox, but I was actually feeling a little Duke Ellington actually.
you wanna okay, which one you wanna do? Which one you want to do? I just figured the B-box name was dope. That was dope.
Let me see if I can do a little bit of both. How about that?
All right, let's see if we can do
This is
both.
totally like now I gotta think about how I'm gonna arrange this. Hold on.
Yeah. Uh, uh. Everybody, give it up. Give it up for my guest, Mr. Dr. Jose Valentino. Uh, and I'm the host, Mr. Brandon Robertson. And this is the Soul Hour. And we gonna take us home. I thank you all for checking us out. No doubt. Peace and love. Oh, and then we go to the bridge. Hey. We bring it home. The Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. I got my guest, Dr. Jose Valentino. We want to wish you all a happy good night. Wish you all a happy good night. Peace and love from yours truly, and we out. Yeah, Jose, man.
Yeah,
Love you, brother.
man.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Hey,
bro.
guys, everybody who's watching, have a great evening. Have a wonderful week. Please, please follow my special guest, Dr. Jose Valentino. Jose Valentino Music. Please follow him on all his social handles, Instagram, Facebook. You got a website, by the way? Do you have a website?
JoseValentino.com.
JoseValentino.com. Make sure you follow my Instagram, Brandon Robertson Music. Follow me on Facebook, Brandon Robertson Music, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you like our show, if you like my show, please subscribe to the channel. Brandon Robertson Soul Hour web series. I also want to shout out my other co-host who's been holding it down behind the scenes every single week, Mr. Adam Klein. Make sure you follow him, 1451 Music. Make sure you follow him on Facebook and on Instagram. Also, shout out to our marketing, our marketing assistant, Miss Julia Klein, his beautiful wife. She hooks us up with all of our advertising. Shout out to her.
Amazing.
Everybody who's been watching, please, thank you so much. Thank y'all very, very, very much. Thank you guys very much. We will see you all next week. And we have my guest next week, y'all. The month of September is going down. So please tune in next Tuesday for another episode of Brandon Robertson Soul Hour. We out, y'all. Peace.